Hello, welcome to Transformation Horizon. I'm Judy, an organizational health strategist and executive coach.
And I'm Sasha Farley, a neuroscience based remote work consultant. In each episode, we discuss how to integrate human flourishing into the ways we work, helping both people and organizations thrive together.
So join us on our Transformation Horizon. Sasha!
Yeah.
All right, we are back at it again. I am really excited about this topic today. But, before we get into our topic, I have a question for you. And I am actually really curious about the answer. Both you and I are entrepreneurs. We are business boss ladies. And with that, there are some days where we're faced with hours and hours of doing something we don't want to do. So, my question for you, how do you motivate yourself to do work you don't want to do?
Hmm. Age old question. It's also tricky because I have ADD, so that doesn't actually help. For all you out there, I feel your pain.
Mm.
What I've been doing lately is downloading everything I need onto my computer to do the work and then going to a coffee shop.
Hmm.
So I can still access the internet if I forgot something, which I tend to do, but it kinda, like, forces me to, like, do just that thing because I either have to walk back after just having my tea or I stick there and I actually finish the work. So, like, physically changing my work environment has been really helpful of late for me to do that thing.
Isn't that something that we learned in class? Like change the container, change the something, outcomes, result. I don't know. Some good things happen when you change the container.
Change it contains it changes your mindset, yeah, and then
Yeah,
as I
there you
started to add
go.
the neuroscience onto it,
Yeah.
it's proved out in the brain science as well, so yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What about you though, Judy?
Um,
I'll learn some tips from you because I still struggle with it even with that little hack.
no, I think what you're doing is a really, really good one actually, because it's reminding me now. I used to do that when we were in grad school. I would go and work. I would talk about some you don't wanna do. Like, our readings or, like, looking at a blank page, like, "I have to write this paper. It is due in 72 hours. I have slack, so I gotta go." And I would intentionally, um, take my computer, take all my stuff, and go to the law school library at AU. It was off campus, it was on a different campus, not too far away, you could walk to it, but, like, being in a law school library, those people are studying with a capital S. No joke, they live there. Like, the level of, like, "Oh, we're really serious about this." We're like it just like, being in that atmosphere helped me be like, "You can't slack off, you can't look at your phone. No, we're not on Instagram. We're studying, we're in the studying environment." And it really, really helped. I'm trying to think about what I do now. How do I motivate myself to do work that I don't wanna do? I actually, it all grad school changed my life, you know? And, like, I'm recognizing now that it started a practice that started in grad school, I still do. I designate a little treat after I've done a chunk of the work that I don't wanna do. So, right now, in owning a business, something I don't wanna do, but I have to do on a regular basis is, like, manage my books. Like, looking at invoices, looking at cash flow, looking at all this stuff. It's like it's not hard. I've definitely gotten much better at it, which I'm proud of, but it I don't wanna look at QuickBooks anymore. Like, it can get so frustrating and everything. So
Right.
there's 1 day a week or a week, 1 day a month when I like designate, all right, we're going in, we're gonna update all the things, we're gonna look at all the numbers, we're gonna like come out of it, we're gonna do all the reconciliation, we're gonna do all of our receipts, we're gonna do the journal entries and quick for everything we accidentally put on our personal credit card. All of that stuff is gonna happen. And I give myself little treats. And now the treats are a little bit of time on Reddit. Set a timer and I go to one of my favorite subreddits is r/soup belly and it's kittens who've eaten too much and they have like a belly full of soup and it's so cute. So that's my little reward system for when I'm doing my accounting. 10
I'm
minutes of
sorry.
pasta soup belly.
That is hilarious, and I'm just picturing you, like, also when you haven't done something to reward yourself, being like, "No, I can't go see the soup bellies today because I didn't do anything hard."
No, no, you need to wait. You can't go look at the soup bellies. They'll be waiting for you, but you gotta do what you gotta do before you can go play with them, I guess.
That's an incredible amount of self-control is all I gotta say. I would just automatically, like, on my phone be like, "How am I on the soup bellies page? I didn't even think I was trying to check the time, and all of a sudden I'm on the soup bellies page."
Wait, what happened? What One I will this is, like, kind of a segue, but one thing that has helped me with the mindless scrolling, I don't even remember how I did it, but there's a way you can set it up so that there are certain apps that you cannot access on, on 5G. Like, you have to be on Wi-Fi for them. So, when I'm on the metro, it's mindless. I'll open my phone, I'll be, "Oh, let me go to Reddit and see what's going on." And then it'll just be a little sad face of like, "You don't have any network." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, because 'cause I'm not supposed to look at you mindlessly." Let me go find a book or something else I can do or a podcast that I can listen and learn to something. That's been really helpful too.
Gotta look that up. I think we all need a little bit of help with that, me for sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I wanna dive into a little bit actually, it's sort of related tangentially. One of the questions that we wanna explore that we hear from a lot of people, especially when we talk about human flourishing and work, and then there's this concept, right, where sometimes when we're working, things are not that interesting.
Mhm.
So, one of the specific examples we've been talking about is basically when I'm processing hundreds of cases or tasks, this did come from a lawyer, but also tasks is a more general sense as well, with no end in sight, how do I find meaning and feel like what I'm doing actually matters?
Mm.
So, Judy, got any tips? It's such an important question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely related to our check-in question, but it is a little different. Well, actually, no, it's related. The When you're doing something that you know intellectually is meaningful, but the experience of it is just a slog, like, with no end in sight. It's like, how do you, like, stay motivated and stay, like, energized around it? Like, that can be really, really hard. Um, Actually, I hadn't thought of this before, but I've had this experience before, and it's very different. I've had, one of my first jobs was this was back in the early 2000s before technology was as good as it was. The job was to scan documents and then, like, enable, like, the OCR. Like, I had to be a person doing that, the ocular something recognition, like, so it can actually read the words. That was not a meaningful job. And it was a slog. So, ways to, like, stay motivated there, I was distracting myself. I was listening to a lot of talk radio because I didn't have a phone and there were no podcasts. Like, I feel like I'm really old now, but yes, I've had that experience of, like, I don't have a phone that does anything. Like, just brought a radio to work and I'm gonna sit with headphones on. But then I think about actually another job I had later in my career where I was, building the course schedule for one of the largest schools at the university that I was working at, and that was I'm gonna say maybe I'm underestimating it, I know, but, like, maybe 5,000 classes that I had to do a lot of manual work on each one of them to get the right information in and then upload all of that, cross-check all of it, and double check it, and that was meaningful work because if I wasn't doing that, then guess what? Students didn't have classes to take. There was no way that they could actually register for them. The professors didn't have classes that they were teaching. All of that keeping all of that in check was meaningful, but I had to kind of reframe what good was at the end of the day. And I think that's like the biggest um takeaway or a lesson that I want to leave around this topic of like when you're doing repetitive work that is meaningful, you have to reframe what good is. Good is not getting to the end of the pile. good or I did a good job today has to have a new definition. Because if you frame it as, I did a good job today if I got to the end of the pile or if I answered all of my emails, buddy, you're not going to have many, many good days. And that's going to start to pile up and it's not going to feel good.
Yeah, I wanna add on to that because it's
Yeah.
actually important as well from a neurological perspective.
Hit me
Like,
with it, Sasha. Let's go.
our brains, like so when we do repetitive tasks, we tend to feel busy, which is good in the moment, but then when we look back on it, isn't very fulfilling,
Mm,
isn't very positive, or doesn't create a sense of meaning, as the questioner asked. What are what does give us a sense of meaning, gives us the motivation, meaning kind of helps us get motivated to keep doing the work, is usually around a sense of progress, a sense of autonomy, or a sense of learning. And so kind of what you said about how do you change the goal of what is a good job and how do you know when you're done? There's like two different ways that you can kind of do that, right? Is it the end of a pile? That's not really all that engaging to just finish a
mhm,
pile. Yes, we like to achieve things and we like to complete things. That's why everyone likes to check a check mark off on a checklist. We do get little dopamine hits from finishing something. So finishing a stack of papers is fine, but if you know that there's just always going to be more papers, it's not really going to give you as much of a dopamine hit because you're like, I'm not actually done. I know I'm not actually done. And over time, you lose the ability to trick yourself by making mini milestones and mini goals, like we say. So when you're in these jobs for really long periods of time, you need to learn new things. A really helpful tip can be around turning what you are doing into something deliberate and something that you want to practice, something about learning, something that you want to learn in the repetitive process. So, kind of the concept is to think about how can you make little identify within the work that you're doing repetitively something that you want to improve.
mm,
Whether it's a specific action that you want to get better at interpreting. Let me use an example. One of the examples we had was from a lawyer's question. So, trying to interpret or see patterns in judges' decisions making if you're seeing a bunch of cases come over and over and over again with the same judge, or little things that are like that. Give yourself many learning possibilities that you can do in the repetitive piece that you don't like to be doing and focus on that part of the repetitive nature of the work. And so it turns the slog of just doing the work over and over and over again into a deliberate place in which you have lots of opportunities to practice something to then learn something because we need to practice things over and over and over and over again to learn. So if
mm,
you're doing something over and over and over again, it actually presents a wonderful opportunity for you to learn something. So sometimes making that shift can be helpful for yourself, and you can decide whatever learning in there is of most interest to you, that you can focus on that instead of the monotony of the repetitive nature of what you're doing. And that is one way in which you can start to trick your brain's reward centers to start to fire and to start motivating yourself to want to do the action because you can see a benefit from it in the end. So I
mm.
just wanted a plus one on that. How do you know you did a good job, or how do you get it's not the pile, how do you turn that into something that can be rewarding for you?
Oh, I love that. And I think if there are any like organizational leaders who are seeing some of this with their team or with people on their team of, hey man, the work we do, it's never really going to stop. Like, case in point, I would say, if you're in the social work field, helping people never really gonna stop. Like that's one of those areas where you can't define I did a good job today by how many people are no longer in poverty today. What? It the time frame, man, it just doesn't work that way. Like so I love what you're saying. So I'm thinking about it from the perspective of a leader who maybe is coming to us and being like, ooh, how do we as an organization help our teams find meaning and a sense of accomplishment when they're churning through high volume, highly repetitive, uh, and also sometimes high EQ work, highly relational work? How do you find and help your team build that sense of meaning, accomplishment, knowing that they did a good job and helping kind of redefine what a good job is? I keep coming back to you have to design for that. So there is a lot of power in rituals, and one of the rituals that people consistently overlook, communication. Like, whenever I run into an organization that has someone in charge of internal communications, I do a dance. Because that signals to me that they understand that the ability to share a story and a narrative internally is so important for so many different things, and being able to do work in a way that also helps your employees and helps the organization flourish in doing the work. So my question would be, if you're like, "What? What are you talking about? Internal communications? I didn't know that was a thing. We only do external comms." Level up. You gotta be thinking about your internal communications. You also gotta be thinking about, other rituals in the workplace. So, what does what are your rituals around celebrating? Do you have any? What do you celebrate? What do you make a big deal about? Bringing it back to what you mentioned, you said, progress, autonomy, and learning. Double asterisk on learning. Do you celebrate learning? Do you communicate about learning? If you know that the work that people are doing is meaningful, but it is very hard for an individual who is in the milieu of doing the work to see and connect to that meaning, then that's part of your job of like, how can we raise that up so it's more prevalent and relevant in the day to day, the learning happened, the that there is progress at a larger scale, that the work and energy that I as an employee have put into something that has a lot of meaning has helped contribute to some sort of progress. That's hard
Definitely.
to do as an individual. The organization needs to design for that to reduce the friction for people to be able to see and connect to that larger story, that larger impact.
Mhm. I love how you bring up the role of not just the individual, right? What you can do on an individual level, but also what the leadership and the organization business responsibility is. There's also an element in this as well, especially when you mentioned social work, which is really heavy and really burdensome.
Mm,
Um, it's in w One of the important pieces is understanding and reconnecting with the impact that you're doing. When you do work that is really heavy, when you do work that is really repetitive, regardless of what it is, your brain adapts to it. So even if you got a lot of meaning from it in the beginning, over time, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're gonna stop getting meaning from it because it starts to become the normal.
mm,
We change our threshold for what is considered normal very quickly, actually. And so once you get used to something, it becomes normal, so you stop recognizing it, so it stops giving you motivation, so it stops giving you a sense of meaning because it's just the day to day. That's why you see a lot when people first start in social work, right? They get a lot of meaning from what they wanna do. They are really invested in it, and then over time, you start to see people seeming to become more and more numb because, 1, you have to protect your emotional piece from our social connection needs, but also because everything you see just becomes a pattern of the new normal, and so it's hard to remember and relate to the impact that you're gonna be making. So one thing that organizations can do is to help highlight the successes. I like how you called out celebration. Success is focused on the impact as well. So what is the point of what we are doing? Social work's a good example. Regularly within the organization structure, calling out and highlighting one success story, that this is the stuff that you guys have done, and call out how the different people within the organization doing different parts of the process that helped make this happen worked. We do this with my technical clients as well when we're developing technology that sometimes has 10-year length from idea to use. They'll do success stories where they highlight this is where it came from. It started at this lab and then it developed here. Then this company bought it and started developing it. And now it's on the Mars rover.
mm,
Right. And so those sort of things are then helpful when you lose the tail of the connection point of what you're doing in this organization who this part of it, this program that helped get from step A to step 2, 3 to 4, or something like that, is helpful for it to be here, right? Without you, it would have stopped there, and we wouldn't have had this technology on this Mars rover. And
Mhm,
so I think it's important to do that, and I think it's on the responsibility of the businesses, because the businesses sometimes have that bigger view, because the people
mhm,
within it are doing their part of the larger puzzle, especially as the organizations get bigger and bigger, and the organization has that larger view, so that you can then create those narratives and those stories, which typically ends up going into the internal comms groups. They're the ones who are responsible for it, but
mhm,
it doesn't have to be. It can also just be a leader who wants to package it up, a leader of a specific vertical, or even like one of the executives who sees a lot of the patterns that the people underneath can't see,
mhm,
highlighting it and sharing that with people on a regular basis so they can be reminded about what they're doing is successful. I think Zappos used to do this actually when they were
mhm,
before they started the holacracy, I think was what they ended with. But they would highlight customer service successes quite regularly. That's why customer service is one of their main drivers and one of their main core values. And they would highlight times where they went above and beyond, cost the company money, but it got above and beyond for to deliver support for a customer.
mhm,
And to your point, that's how you know what the culture is, and that is what continues to motivate people to do, honestly, a pretty repetitive task. Selling shoes online was is like a pretty repetitive concept. It's not super innovative, but they were able to motivate people around why you're doing it, and most importantly, I think why people love Zappos, the why they were doing it was a human-based reason for why. Don't underestimate that that's part of the importance of it, but I think all of that relates to each other.
absolutely. So you brought up a really good point there around like not every organization is going to have an internal comms team. Many of them don't, unfortunately. I'm hoping to change that. But at least, hey, you know it's an option and it can be helpful. But you mentioned that like, it doesn't have to be an internal comms team. It doesn't have to be somebody else. Like you as the leader, you maybe an exec. You how are you utilizing storytelling to address this, but also just to like help support like the motivation and the flourishing of the workforce that is doing the work. I remember I was working with one exec who this kind of came up and they had had a really interesting and, impactful interaction with a grantee, I think, and it was like they went on a site visit or something, or they were just, like, doing their work of, like, fundraising, and it's so just in happenstance, they had a really great interaction with a grantee, and someone on their team said, "You should put that in your message to the company." That this exec already had, like, kind of a regular message cadence, like, where they would send out some sort of communication. But when I asked them, "Okay, what's the hesitation? Why that sounds like a great idea." They were reluctant because they're like, "Oh, I don't wanna, like, just be bragging about, like, the thing that I went to." I went to, like, a gala, and I met a grantee, and it was really great, and it's like, "But you're the executive of the company. You're supposed to be at gala. You're supposed to be in those rooms getting that money. So, you were where you were supposed to be, number 1." And it was just really interesting. There was something there that was holding that person back from sharing the story. And I had to help them like reframe, why are you sharing this story? It's not for a personal reason. It's not to brag about, "Ooh, look at the cool things I'm doing, the rooms I'm in." That's not why I know this leader. That's not why you're here. This is not an ego boost for you. You're here and you're doing this because you care about this mission. So if you have a story to tell or a celebration to share that can support the rest of your workforce in continuing to do that mission and seeing how what they are doing is having an impact, why wouldn't you share that? That's so powerful.
Yeah.
So it's this idea of we all want to be and feel connected to something bigger. And storytelling is one of the best ways and honestly, cheapest ways. You don't need to build a big old fancy thing. just go back to storytelling, tell the story, share the information, make the connection of like how this led to impact and how the work you did led to this impact and share the appreciation.
Yeah, I think when I think back on our conversation, just a key takeaway is like twofold, right? From an individual perspective, find ways to make what you're doing interesting, and our brains love to learn. So find something within the repetitive tasks that you're doing that you can learn and improve on. And so
Mhm,
then you can focus on that, and the rest just becomes the what is around it, and you're focusing on the learning action that you have. And then from a leadership perspective, it sounds like it's about helping people make that connection between regularly and remind people because our brains will stop forgetting for ourselves. Remind people the importance they have for the success of your organization or the success of the business or the success of why they're doing what they're doing, and if possible, tie it to something human.
mhm,
Because yes, people kind of care if their business is successful from a profit perspective, but they really only care about job security in relation to that,
mhm,
which is fine. It's an important element. Job security is a motivator. Like, having a job and making money is a motivator. But in terms of that meaning sense making that we wanted to talk about, feel like it actually matters. It's more about the impact it has on a human level and a
mhm,
human based impact, even if your job is like Zappos, which is selling shoes online or was selling shoes online.
mhm, mhm.
Any last thoughts before we wrap up, Judy?
Only thing that I'll say is I love what you said earlier about as we as human beings, we lose the ability to trick ourselves because our brains are really good at adapting and getting used to stuff. So it's not gonna be a one and done necessarily. You gotta keep at it a little bit. Keep checking in with yourself and checking in with your team and with your organization and making those adjustments as necessary. But yeah, that idea of where are the opportunities for growth here? And let's focus on that and defining I did a good job today as I learned something today.
Yep.
Feels powerful to me.
Super powerful. Okay. And with that, we are going to end this episode. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Transformation Horizon. If you did, please share it with anyone who might be interested on this topic or any of the other topics that we talk about.
Yeah, and please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever. Give us a 5-star rating. We want to know that you're out there and that you're listening. Please leave us a review. And if you have a question about the workplace, about human flourishing that you would like us to answer in an upcoming episode, send them to transformationhorizon@gmail.com.
Bye.
Bye.